What is up, everyone? Brandon Ferst, aka First Report, representing the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are First. Welcome into another edition of the NFL Weekly. We break down everything that is going on in the world of the NFL as we get closer and closer to that September 12th weekend where we get that first full Sunday of NFL football. As we get closer, we are going to be diving into the NFC West tonight. Make sure you go back and listen to our last four podcasts. We broke down the other divisions as we finish that up and get you ready for the season. With me tonight, as always, we'll start with Coach Brandon Lupian. You can find Coach Lupian at Portland 76er on Twitter. Coach Lupian, how you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing quite well. Got another great Wednesday show for everyone with my two favorite guys, and looking forward to it. And we're another week away from football.
Amen. We are getting closer. We're getting to the point where this time tomorrow, pretty much most teams will have at least stepped on the field. I know they go pretty much all weekend, but the first full weekend of preseason will be this weekend. Obviously, we had the Hall of Fame game last Thursday. The Steelers won, but we are having a bit of technical issues with our friend Raider Jim. He might pop back in at the moment. So, but if he does, we'll introduce him. But we will dive in, just myself and Coach Lupian at the moment. It's a situation. I believe this division, I think it's going to come down to being the most competitive. There's no doubt about it. I think the NFC East is going to be competitive for maybe different reasons. I don't think they're very good teams in the NFC East, but they're all very similar in terms of their level. Not so much the case here. You could make a case that whoever wins this division is probably going to be the number two behind Tampa Bay, if we all, expect to see how that goes. But at the moment, we are looking at the the NFC West. Coach Lupian will start in the Valley of the Sun in Arizona, as we'll see if actually we'll hold off one sec. Raider Jim did just pop in. We'll see if we can get his introduction all in there.
He just slides on in like the
yes,
OG.
He does. All righty. Hopefully popping in here at any moment. But yeah, Coach Lupian, what are your thoughts? Arizona Cardinals obviously added a couple players. But look, if it was 5 years ago, the addition of J.J. Watt and A.J. Green would have gone somewhere. But this year, it just kind of seems like it adds a little bit of age onto it.
Yeah, before I get into Arizona, this conference here is probably the deepest, most cutthroat conference, I think, in the league. You mentioned Tampa Bay may be the one, but they're still in my Saints league division, so might not be as easy. But, when it comes down to this division itself, these guys, once they get into division play, they're going to beat the heck out of each other. Up and down this division, in my opinion, there isn't one like cellar dweller. There just isn't, including leading into Arizona. The dynamicy of Kyler Murray and what they do offensively is new age, new ways, just new train of thought, with Kingsbury running the offense or calling the plays. But they put up points, and they've shown the ability to put up points. That was a team that self-destructed after the Hail Murray play against the Bills, and you saw the Bills rocket sky high after that. But then you kind of see Arizona just kind of plateau and stay level. Then they had some key pieces, and not just J.J. Watt on defense, but they addressed that side of the ball. And then they draft well. And then they had young guys last year on the defensive side of the ball that, hey, they're another year in the system, another year more knowledgeable. So I don't think this is going to be a cupcake team in this division. Again, I think when they get going in this division, these guys are going to be right in the mix. Each one of these teams is going to beat each other up. And I compare it to what the NFC South has been the last couple of years, beating each other up, finally the rise and claim of the championship by Tampa Bay, but like you would see Atlanta on runs, and then my Saints on like runs where we're finishing like 12-3, 3 consecutive years. But inside the division, there really is no cakewalk. Where you see like when you're talking cakewalks with the Falcons, all of a sudden they come out and then just blast my Saints. Like there's no cakewalks in this NFC West. I think San Francisco is, regardless of who's under center, is another year improved. Same, what you're going to get with Seattle, but then what Arizona has done, like, I think they're going to speak volumes, because not one team, even the Rams, have been silent all season. Everyone's made noise all off season. Why? Because they know like their window is like this small up and down this division, and they all got to stay like keep pace with each other. There's not one like top elite team, that's going to separate themselves from each other. And everyone's going to be in a dogfight each week within each other. So I've enjoyed Kyler Murray's ability and his talent since he got drafted. He's one of my son's like biggest supporters, and my son's not even a football guy, but he knows Kyler Murray, and he knows how he could just tuck it and run or slang it for another Hail Murray, and he's a dynamic offensive player. So I think his play speaks volumes, and it's going to be his play that dictates how far this team really goes. But I think it's going to be one competitive division up and down.
I agree. And in Vegas, the odds makers, they agree as well. At the moment, of all the divisions, Arizona has the longest odds to win the division. They're 6-1. I mean, let's just kind of put that into perspective. The Jets, maybe not the Giants, but the Jets and the Jaguars, they're in the 22-1 range in terms of them winning the division. But this division at only plus 600 for the Cardinals, expected to finish last, but still pretty good odds if you are a big Kyler Murray fan. Let's see if we do have our friend Raider Jim Martinez all queued up. Can you hear us, Mr. Martinez?
I can hear you now. I can even see
Hey, awesome.
you now. Technology is a wonderful thing.
What are your thoughts on the Arizona Cardinals?
Arizona Cardinals, the offensive line seems to improve just a little bit. They were good for passing. They were good for rushing, but they've been a little bit banged up and injury prone last season. They were kind of like it undid a lot of their efforts. Now they do have a kid over there, and his name is DJ Humphries. DJ Humphries, he's a great tackle. The thing is, he gets to be a little complacent. He kind of takes his foot off the gas, and he needs a little encouragement and motivation. And if you need encouragement and motivation on the offensive line, your problems are solved if you bring in Rodney Hudson. And that's exactly what they did, because the old Raider, the cornerstone of the offensive line for the Raiders, is going to be wearing the Cardinal uniform. And let me tell you, that's all the motivation you're going to need. And I think he's going to be a great mentor. And I think the offensive line is going to step up. It's going to be great for Kyler Murray. I think it's going to be, they're going to do a little better, but we'll see. On the defensive side of the ball, I know the linemen, they got a lot of banged up people already. I mean, J.J. Watt, that's great. He's gone and he's going to make his millions and everything, but he can't even suit up at this point. So they even had to they brought in a journeyman today. I can't remember what his name is, but they've got a lot of people that are out on the defensive side of the ball. James Conner is going to be back. He's going to be another strong performer again. DeAndre Hopkins. I think they're going to be good. Are they going to be great? No. Are they going to be a wild card team? I don't even see that happening. Not with the Seahawks and the Rams coming out of this division.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things, you obviously talked about the injuries already on the defensive side of the ball. Losing Patrick Peterson to Minnesota as well. Definitely a captain, a leader on that team. That's going to be something to worry about. Buda Baker is going to have to step up there in the secondary. Obviously, the pass rush is going to be there. I do expect J.J. Watt probably to come in, but even then, I brought up J.J. Watt and A.J. Green 5 years ago. You bring that in, and you have by far the best offseason maybe ever. Those are the two best players of their position, but that's 5 years ago. It's 2021 now. I'm not trying to discount what J.J. Watt or A.J. Green has brought to the game, but of all the four major sports, the lifespan of a football player is the shortest by far, because of just the physicality of the game, and those are very physical positions. I mean, A.J. Green has just battled through injuries and maybe some bad ownership as well, but he gets an opportunity now in Arizona to hopefully make the playoffs, but it's going to be very, very difficult, as kind of what Raider Jim, I'll kind of piggyback on what he said. When the Arizona Cardinals announced Cliff Kingsbury as their head coach, I was critical. I mean, I think he was 5-7 at Texas Tech, which, hey, I'm not asking you to beat Oklahoma and Texas every year, but let's get to a bowl game before we move up to the NFL. And obviously, with the drafting Kyler Murray, I was a little hesitant on that. Look, I'm not breaking any news by telling you that Kyler Murray is probably smaller than most NFL scouts would want your quarterback to be. But he's been dynamic, as Coach Lupian said. My main concern is defenses have caught up to him. Defenses know how to affect him, how to make things happen. Now, easier said than done. Don't get me wrong. To ask the Buffalo Bills about containing Kyler Murray. It's not like you just go out there, flick a switch, and everything works out. But for the most part, there's a game plan. There's a way to shut down Kyler Murray. Can you do it? That's another question. The problem with Kyler Murray is all three defenses in this division kind of are set up to do that. We have a lot of really good defenses, even if it's not the Legion of Boom like it was in Seattle. But of all these coaches, every single one of these coaches have been to the Super Bowl at least once, maybe not have won it, but have been there, except for Cliff Kingsbury. Obviously, you have a quarterback in Matthew Stafford, who I'll get to in a bit, but all these other quarterbacks have kind of been there. They've been around, and then there's Kyler Murray. So I feel like that's kind of the chip on the Cardinals' shoulder right now. They are definitely good enough to win this division, but I don't think it's in the cards yet. And it's difficult because they're in such a mesh of some big time players towards the tail end of their careers versus young talent that are trying to figure it out. You wonder how that equals out to where that window opens or closes. I will say, however, the addition of James Conner, I think I've always been a Conner fan, even if it's just to make Terminator joke references as he runs people over. But he's a guy I think that will fit in a lot better than a David Johnson. And Chase Edmonds is also a guy I think that can really be a great little not scapegoat, but a little secondary option for Kyler Murray. If things break down deep down the field, drop it off to a little scat back of Chase Edmonds. But we'll see how Arizona goes about things. It's going to be difficult. This whole division, Coach, you brought it up. At what point is too much? Do these teams beat each other up too much? And then we get to the playoffs, it's just not there. But unfortunately, at least for the moment, it looks like we did lose Raider Jim again. But we will move up to the team that is expected to finish third in the division. It's the Seattle Seahawks, plus 260 to win the division, 2.6 to 1 to win it. Obviously, those are very, very interesting odds. Coach Lupian, what are your thoughts? The Seattle Seahawks, obviously, most notably known for the beast mode and Legion of Boom days. They've moved beyond that, and kind of similar to what we talked about with Green Bay, had some off-field drama with their quarterback. Now Russell Wilson maybe doesn't have the ego that Aaron Rodgers did, so it wasn't the biggest story like the Aaron Rodgers deal was, but definitely still some questions in Seattle. What are your thoughts on the Seahawks?
Yeah, it's what's with these prima donna quarterbacks where as soon as the season ends, they got to hear their name, other than coming from a spouse or something, and these guys, Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson, their off-season drama like, gosh, can you mirror it any more? And again, the Legion of Boom is gone. Marshawn Beast Mode is gone. And it's unfortunate. It's a direct reflection of these big contracts that these prima donna quarterbacks have, where they won that Super Bowl with Russell Wilson on that rookie contract, and they were able to surround him with talented veteran players that were making top dollar on for themselves. But then, he gets out of that rookie contract and signs that big lucrative deal. They're not able to surround him with quality veteran players that require that amount of money. So then the weight gets burdened on his shoulders, and you see that drop off on the defensive end. You see the imbalance from the running back position, where they're going through 2 or 3, Chris Carson, Rashad Penny, and then I forgot the other guys, and they're trying to replace Beast Mode, and the Legion of Boom isn't as successful as what it was, especially with their late round draft picks, all those guys that they are able to develop and pick up in the late rounds, not necessarily the first round guys, and them, they're really trying to pick up the slack and win on the offensive end versus shutting teams out on the defensive end. So, I mean, I'm always of the notion defense wins championships, and they just haven't been able to find that notable Pete Carroll defense, that suffocates offenses and doesn't blow leads late in games. So, honestly, I see Arizona and I see Seattle. They're just a mishmash of an identical team, other than the youth at quarterback. But they're both offensively dynamic, led by undersized quarterbacks with leadership skills and all that other thing. But then what about the stuff that builds the rest of the team? And they're trying to find that. And unfortunately, they just haven't been. But, to their respect, they've been a player or two from advancing, and to a round, in the playoffs. So, I mean, again, I still see this division as extremely tough to win and not necessarily like going to one team or another. And each game, you're going to see some surprises. Like, each team has each other's like playbook. Arizona plays the Niners tough as nails every game. Even when the Niners made it to the Super Bowl, it was Arizona that challenged those guys. It was Arizona that kept the underovers or the spread tight. It was them. And then now it's and then for Seattle, like, they're like what they are to like Green Bay, so everyone has their own like notebook or scouting report per team, and it's just about who's going to execute it better. I would say it's about time Seattle recovers from that Super Bowl hangover, and they better get their act right, because again, I mentioned that window's like this, for every one of those teams in that division. And just because they have one of the best quarterbacks in the league doesn't mean that window's, stretches, right? So interesting to say the least, on paper, other than, well, even the wide receiving core. I mean, Larry Fitzgerald isn't back yet for Arizona, but like on paper, like you could only say the wide receiver cores between the two, Arizona and Seattle, advantage Seattle, where if Larry Fitzgerald is back, that veteran is probably a nudge up, for Arizona. So I don't really see a lot of difference in the two, except coaching staffs.
Yeah.
The experience of Carroll versus the McVay effect Kingsbury,
Yeah.
That's the only reason he got the job, because the McVay effect, right? I mean, he should have really No, he probably, if he stayed at USC, he might be the head coach right now.
Mhm.
He might be. So who knows?
Yeah, and I would say for Seattle, their biggest addition wasn't a draft pick. It wasn't a free agent signing. It's the return of the fans. Obviously,
Yeah.
the ability in Kansas City, you know, the Superdome. I don't have to tell Coach about the home field advantage, but those teams that really rely on that, you know, that noise, that extra little oomph that they get from their fans. Seattle is right there, if not at the top, very near the top in terms of kind of missing that from last year. But, you know, it's Seattle's one of those teams, it seems like they go for 10, 11 games in a season where they look absolutely unbeatable. I mean, looking like, okay, here comes Legion of Boom 2.0, or Russell Wilson's finally going to win that elusive MVP. And then for whatever reason, whether it's early in the season, it's in the middle, or it's towards the end, there are also 5 or 6 games where they can't beat anybody. And that's not going to cut it, especially in this division. I go back to last year, I'd say week 10, 11, or 12, Russell Wilson was, I mean, the odds-on favorite to win the MVP. I believe the Seahawks were, you know, heavily favored to win that division, and it all kind of went awry. They might have won the division, but I'm pretty sure they lost to the Rams in that playoff game in which I believe it was John Wolford versus I don't even remember the guy's name, but essentially it was Jared Goff, who was still in LA at the time, and Russell Wilson were both out. Yeah. And you know, you're kind of stuck with the backup of the backups. And I really do believe the year of 2020 in football was the year of the backup quarterback, where we had, it seemed like 8 or 10 AAF quarterbacks starting late in the season. And that was definitely 2 of the foremost. But for Seattle, the blueprint's there. See, for better or worse, Pete Carroll is going to do things his way. Does it work? Not all the time. You want to talk about a Super Bowl hangover? I'm so glad you brought that up, because I kind of liken this team to the early 90s Bills. There are very few teams. Obviously, look, the Bills had their 4 misses or 4 losses in a row, and then they had the wide left or wide right, whatever it was. Since that time, from that early 90s Bills to that Seahawk Super Bowl debacle, there was never a moment where you just looked and went, oh my gosh, I can't believe that just happened in the Super Bowl, like the Donald Butler or Malcolm Butler, whichever Butler it was who made that interception in the Super Bowl. That was, you know, memes to the point where it's, you see somebody on the 1 yard line or at the end of the game, and the first thing that they bring up is Marshawn Lynch not getting the ball. And it seems like since then, the Seattle Seahawks franchise has just kind of been sputtering. It's kind of football purgatory. I talk about it a lot. Look, you either need to be competitive in AFC, NFC championship games year in and year out, or you need to go 1-15 and get a top 5 draft pick to rebuild. And if you're going 8-8, if you're going 9-7, going out in the first round, congratulations. Enjoy the number 3 position player in all the drafts from here on out. Hopefully you can develop, and they can. But at the end of the day, this division is so tough, so tight. I agree with you. I think Arizona and Seattle, very, very similar teams, minus the coaching staffs. The coaching staff in Seattle, at the very least, has a lot more experience. I do think they're better. Once again, Cliff Kingsbury, he's already impressed me more than I expected. The fact that he isn't even on the hot seat by now is kind of crazy, but good for this for Seattle. Their window is definitely closing, but I don't think it's shut just yet. But moving on, higher up the division, it is the San Francisco 49ers. Obviously, we talked, I want to say 2 or 3 months ago, and kind of talked about which teams that did not make the playoffs last year are most likely to make the playoffs this year. I think for both of us, it was the San Francisco 49ers, kind of that easy pick. Obviously, there were a lot of injury issues last year. I specifically remember a certain Thursday night game where, despite giving the Ravens and the Steelers, it seemed like almost 10 days to reschedule their COVID game, the 49ers had to essentially play with nobody on a Thursday night against the Green Bay Packers, because of course we have to have that Amazon Prime game for all of us Amazon Prime users, says the NFL. But anyways, so there were a lot of question marks there. They never were really able to recover, but at the very least, the San Francisco 49ers were a thorn in certain teams' sides going down the stretch. Obviously, Trey Lance has been brought in. There are a lot of questions about Jimmy Garoppolo. There are a lot of things on 49ers Twitter right now that are showing you all kinds of highlight packages and throws that Trey Lance is making. And I will say this, I caution everyone on this. Look, the throws that are made August 11th in a controlled setting in the backfield of UC Irvine are great. And I only say UC Irvine because that's where I know the LA Rams train. I don't know where, maybe Santa Clara University. But anyways, wherever the 49ers are training, those throws on those backfields are not going to be what these guys are measured on. It's obviously great. We know there's the arm strength there, but you don't have Aaron Donald, you don't have JJ Watt, you don't have Chandler Jones chasing you down with the game on the line before you make those throws. Really excited to see Trey Lance, but I will say, as somebody whose team kind of, let's just say, welcomed a quarterback controversy through the draft, it doesn't always end up with rainbows and championships. So I'll say that right now. Jimmy Garoppolo obviously still wants to keep his starting job. Trey Lance wants to be the starter right away. Someone's going to feel a little perturbed how they deal with that. We'll see how that goes. But Coach Lupian, what are your thoughts? The San Francisco 49ers.
I think Shanahan has a lot to prove. Forget about who's QB1 at the moment. You know, this is a guy that has the pedigree and the background coming from his father, developing quarterbacks at every stop that he was been at, either Atlanta or Washington, and now San Francisco a couple years ago, with kind of like an unknown Garoppolo. You know, he was really unknown. Like, nobody knew what he was going to be when he got traded by New England. And he has his faults, but like, I think this is more on what Shanahan's going to do and deliver the goods for this Niner team, because, you know, I think we all know what Garoppolo is going to bring to the field. You know, pretty intelligent dude, but, you know, can you count on him when it matters to not throw a pick? Who knows, you know, but, you know, it doesn't bode well as far as like historical preferences go. And then again, the throws Trey Lance is doing in training camp, August 11th, is not what it is. You know, it's going to look great in preseason because you got these like just makeshift defenses, not really showing any, you know, hidden coverages or, you know, stuff like that. You know, it's all going to change in a month and a half too, once the season actually gets going, and now you're not facing these vanilla defenses, you know, in, you know, I can't repeat it enough, an already competitive, tough division with the likes of Arizona that plays you well. The likes of a Seattle that, you know, they've been king of the throne for a while, and they still got good head coaches, and they got one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And then you got the McVay effect, you know, of the LA Rams and what they've done, bringing in who they brought in. And then, you know, they finished last year in the league, the number one defense, you know, and it just, they're a nightmare for quarterbacks. And they're a nightmare for rookie quarterbacks, I'll say that. Then they're a nightmare for quarterbacks that are in the middle of a controversy. One set of fans want to see this, and the other set of fans want to see this guy, you know. And then there's that one set of fans that is like, just give me CJ Beathard. You know, I don't
Nick
even
Mullins.
know.
Nick Mullins as well.
Yeah. You know, I don't know if Beathard's there, but it's like, geez. And I think what's for the Niners, it's not so much what's under center, it's what they do on the other side of the ball. And they've lost a couple of players the last couple of years, and they seem to find ways to shoot themselves in the foot, like Boza. You know, who knows what's going to be expected out of that mess, you know, and that controversy, and how that's going to bode well in the locker room, you know. So it's, you know, this all adds to, scraping and fighting and clawing and trying to pull yourself away and be competitive. And you're already facing these teams in your division, let alone whoever they have to face outside the division, and then you got reputations to protect as far as being able to develop quarterbacks or being an offensive genius, and then they lose a guy like Robert Salah to the Jets to be a head coach, and all you ever hear this guy is how he holds his defenses accountable, and each one of those guys are treated the same, not one bigger than the next, and that's reflective in their play and then their discipline and all that, and so it's how they replace Salah, the loss, versus what the additions do. I think for every rookie, it's a learning curve. Justin Aber for the Chargers. Yeah, he had a great year, but the dude still had to learn. Everyone goes through that curve, and we all go through different curves in the season. But it's what the defense is going to do, because we saw how dynamic they've been. We saw how explosive and how bruising and shut down these guys have been. Well, now they lost, the head of the snake. So we'll see. But, they could still put up points. They still have a plethora of running backs that could put the ball in the end zone at the drop of a step, and they're gone, and then they got a nice wide receiver core if those quarterbacks could manage the game. And I know that's not what they're looking for Trey Lance to do, but he's got to be a field manager before he could be an all-pro, But again, it comes down to that defense and how they're gonna be what they were when they made it to the Super Bowl, because it wasn't so much Garoppolo leading them to the Super Bowl; it was that defense that led them to the Super Bowl.
Agreed.
Right.
And it was, and I completely agree with you in terms of the Salah effect. As whenever you have a coach, look, Kyle Shanahan, fantastic offensive mind, could break down probably any offense that has ever been put on a football field at any level. Not the case on the defensive side of things, which is okay. There's not very many coaches that can do both. Believe me, if you can, you're fantastic. Even Belichick, he's a defensive guy. So that just means there's extra added importance on that kind of offensive, or in this case, defensive coordinator. And obviously, Salah's gone. Mike McDaniel, the new defensive coordinator, has been with Shanahan for the last 4 years in San Francisco. So there is that familiarity. Obviously, the team, they're going to buy it. I can't imagine the 49ers. Can't imagine Mike McDaniel kind of goes into this and goes, okay, we're blowing it up. We're starting from scratch. I mean, the groundwork is there. Mike McDaniel has been on the staff. There's going to be a lot of the same principles. And another part of this too is Salah does leave to not only a different conference, but also, I mean, pretty much all the way across the country. So, you can change, if they run into the Jets, whatever, in the next couple years, they'll probably have to change a couple things. But, it's not like you're having to play these guys either in conference or even twice a year. If this guy were to go, say to the Cardinals or something like that. So there's not a huge amount of what needs to be changed. But you also hit something else on the head. Whichever quarterback is chosen, and I think if the 49ers had their choice, if they could set it up the way they want it to, they obviously would want Jimmy Garoppolo to start. I think every NFL team, if you ask them what's your ideal situation, it would be, I call it the Carson Palmer effect, be able to sit him down for a couple years, the Aaron Rodgers effect, let him sit behind that guy. Now, that's easier said than done. You brought it up. You have those already, those fan bases. The minute that Trey Lance was drafted, the San Francisco 49ers fan base split in half, or at least split up. I don't know where but you had the Trey Lance guys or Trey Lance people, and then you had the Jimmy Garoppolo people, and you still have CJ Beathard people out there too, I'm sure. But at the end of the day, there's division. You know what teams don't have division right now? all the other teams in this division and their fan
Right.
bases. All the other teams in this fan bases, they're all on board. They're all pulling for Kyler Murray in Arizona.
Yep.
They're all pulling for Russell Wilson in Seattle. They're all pulling for Matthew Stafford in Los Angeles. And it's going to be interesting. Obviously, last year in Philadelphia, there was those quarterback controversy. One thing, you didn't have the fans in Philadelphia to be chanting for Jalen Hurts week 4, week 5, when Carson Wentz was struggling. San Francisco, or Santa Clara, I should say, that's where it will happen. There will be fans there in that stadium. And the pressure is going to be on Kyle Shanahan. But I will say, I think Shanahan has shown that whatever quarterback he has his hands on, he's going to do pretty darn well with. But the defense is a big part of this. And now moving on to the favorite in this division, and a team, you want to talk about defense? My goodness, this is a very stout, scary defense. And to be honest, not a whole lot of teams have had the upheaval that the Los Angeles Rams have had, at least in terms of playoff teams having upheaval. Obviously, franchise quarterback, or former franchise quarterback, Jared Goff, shipped to Detroit, bring in really, I believe, the East Coast, or the NFC version of Aaron Rodgers, or in Phillip Rivers, in Matthew Stafford. I think Matthew Stafford, maybe not the most successful quarterback, isn't, he's going to throw his fair share of interceptions, but there's a couple things that he will do. He's going to keep his team in the game pretty much at all opportunities. And he's going to be one tough son of a gun. This is a guy who does not miss football games for little knick-knack injuries. He's a guy who every chance he gets, he's out there sacrificing for his team. And let's be honest, the Detroit Lions, even this has kind of been the glory years of the Lions, going back to their 0-16 year. Matthew Stafford has kind of been a part of that kind of dynamic, I guess, for their sake, dynamic offensive years. He had obviously Calvin Johnson. He is moving on. I'm really excited for him because I think he now has a chance to go on and possibly contend for a Super Bowl. At the moment, the LA Rams are plus 160 to win the division. Coach Lupian, what are your thoughts on the Los Angeles Rams?
I've always been a Matthew Stafford fan. I was really hoping that the Saints would pick him up when his name got in those talks. But then there's always the question of his health the last couple of seasons. But man, that's a dude that's been beat up and dragged through the ringer for a Detroit team that, other than when they had Megatron, really had nothing else to offer. Now he's got the offensive mind of a McVay. He's got, and help me here, they have a really good tight end. What's his name? He's there.
I think Higbee's there. You're not talking about Higbee,
right?
There's someone else. Keep going. I'll find out.
Then there's Robert Woods, right, on the outside, who's kind of like their Mr. Everything. They line him up on the outside, they line him up inside, put him in the slot. He kind of does he's the jack of all trades for that wide receiving core. And then you have your other two set of wide receivers, and I don't know the names because they're not my team, but it's like he's got a nice crew to work with, and on top of inheriting like the number one defense like in the league, he's never been set up to succeed in his entire career until now. So with that weight, like, can he handle it? Talent-wise, yeah. Attitude-wise, yeah. Leadership-wise, yeah. We'll just see how healthy he stays, and but again, man, I've always been a fan of his.
Yeah.
Always been a fan of his. And yeah, he's gritty. And I don't want to say Goff isn't gritty, but like he's not gritty like Stafford gritty, Goff is that LA pretty
He's
boy.
a pretty boy. Yeah, he's a pretty boy.
He's gonna have like I don't want to say too much of a culture shock going to Detroit, but he's not living the life. He's not going down Sunset. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's there's
a palm tree in sight.
Yeah, if you remember the old Mighty Ducks, I think it was the original. the most controversial, trash talk. They called him, he was a cake eater. That's kind of how I think about, Jared Goff. Like, he's the guy that, he's gotta have his shoes, perfectly pressed and all that. Matthew Stafford goes, okay, if I don't have to wear shoes, whatever, I just want to play ball. And that's Matthew Stafford. And kind of going back to what you talked about with the Saints, how crazy would it have been if the Saints did bring in Matthew Stafford? Because I'm pretty sure Drew Brees and Matthew Stafford went to the same high school in Texas. And that would have been something crazy. Actually, you know what? I just realized, no, it's Nick Foles and Drew Brees who, but I do know Matthew Stafford played football in Texas. But anyways, all dawned on me about 5 seconds before I opened my mouth. That's
all good. It's all good. But he's a dude that just hasn't been surrounded by enough. Gosh, from the coaching stand all the way through, the last guy, player number 55 or 58, or how many the roster size is. Like, he's got it made, man.
Yeah.
He really does. And as much as I love Dan Campbell and what I think he'll do for Detroit, like, Dan Campbell's more of a Matthew Stafford kind of coach than a cake eater, Jared Goff kind of coach, you know? But, that was last week's show, right?
Yeah.
I missed it. But, I could see why they're the odds-on favorite to win it, and as much as I like Stafford and as much as this team is loaded defensively and offensively, man, I just can't cheer for them being in LA, and I just can't cheer for them being in the same conference as my Saints.
Yeah.
But
it's another question mark. The Chargers and now the Rams, along with the Raiders, are going to open up their new stadiums. I've always said the LA Rams are the number 2 team in Los Angeles. And no, the Chargers are not number 1. The Raiders are by far the number 1 team in Los Angeles and probably big parts of California, or at least the West Coast. But for Matthew Stafford, I think he had a great opportunity, with on the offensive side of the ball, when he had Calvin Johnson, he had those weapons, but their defenses were terrible. He'd have to put up 50 points a game, and he got darn close to it a lot, and they'd still only go 8-8. And that was, like I said, kind of the glory days of the Lions. And that's kind of sad for him. I think kind of a last shot or a chance before, because eventually that arm is going to start to fade. And this is kind of towards the end of his career, no doubt about it. He has, I believe, on his team, the best football player in the game in
Aaron Donald?
Yes, thank you. I was going to say Aaron Ramsey, but that's a mix of Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. But no, Aaron Donald, who is an absolute beast in the inside. I've never personally seen a defensive tackle make the type of impact that he does every single play. I mean, Sapp was amazing, don't get me wrong, but this guy almost seems to affect plays almost 50% of the time, which is crazy considering, you think all you have to do is double or triple team him and they still gets through. But for Matthew Stafford and the Rams, it's going to be, I believe, how the coaching staff handles certain things. They're going to hit some speed bumps. There's going to be some trouble, some turmoil. How does this team respond? That's always been, I would say, my biggest critique of Sean McVay. Non-ability to make adjustments. It goes back to the Super Bowl. I'm sorry. Look, if you're an offensive genius and all this stuff, you have to score a touchdown in the Super Bowl, or you have a lot to prove to me in the meantime. And that's, I think, something he's worked on. At the same time, though, I think he could probably make the case that maybe it was a quarterback situation. I don't fully agree with that. I will say Deshaun Jackson still kicking around the league. He's going to be on the Rams. I'll tell you what, he's good for a couple home run balls once or twice a game. And it's just, 34 years of age. At what point can he stay healthy? At what point, does maybe that ego get into it? Maybe if he doesn't get a ton of catches, but we'll see how it goes. This division is going to be absolutely wide open. I'm really excited to see who brings it home. I don't think we're only getting one playoff team in this division. We might get 2 or 3 when it's all said and done, but definitely multiple teams, at least 2. But Coach Lupian, final thoughts here for the NFL Weekly.
You know, unfortunately, we didn't have our esteemed colleague, Raider Jim. I did my best for the team, and I'm looking forward to next week. And you know, we're knocking them down. You know, there's preseason games going on. They don't really count, but there's games going on, and you know, I think you could still vig it. You know, preseason game.
Yeah, you
gotta
can
get started warming up on my Viget game. You know,
Yeah.
I gotta get them Viget coins, you know. So it was good. It was really good. This was a good reprieve from work.
Yeah.
You know?
The heat, the humidity here in Southern California. But yeah, it's unfortunate, you know, unfortunately the technology doesn't always come through. I'm sure plenty of you in the last year or two have had some Zoom issues, so I'm sure you can understand. But we got the job done as best as possible. And of course, you have to know that if Raider Jim was here, he would have brought the heat. And can't wait to be back with him next week, where we will break down. We'll start diving into our individual divisions. We'll start with my NFC East, and hopefully it won't be the NFC least like it was last year, but we'll have plenty to talk about then. But with that, thank you all so much for listening to this week's edition of the NFL Weekly, where we broke down the NFC West, presented by the First Off the Bench Podcast Network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. It is time for you all to go wash your hands and stop hating everybody. We will talk to you all very soon. Take care.